like we should have had some like music, like hey,
to
get
start
started,
out.
let's move.
Music is always
I'll
good.
do some of those awesome team building activities. Everybody stand up, raise your hand to the side.
Well, we could always sing a song. There's a
yeah.
the virtual singing part always helps. You never know how to sing along.
Yeah. The only thing is when you do the choral singing, I marvel at how they're able to do that through Zoom, and it sounds great. Right. When I've been on Zoom calls with my girls group and we start singing, it's like lagging behind and not it's not synchronous, so it doesn't sound well. So.
Well, if I can come up with a song, the Uptown Road song. I think I played that last time I sang. Uptown Road, gotta ride to the kingdom.
Oh,
ride
I can probably think of something other than that one. So.
I think that was with the middle school. I did the middle schoolers at Texas State. I think I did the.
It was the. They like that.
It was the student council conference. That's what it was. Middle school student council.
Okay. Yeah, the kids were really into that song. I think I was initially, but then it wore me out. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'll just monitor the screen for others who are coming in. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited that you are taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for our presentation on peaceful practices. So, since there isn't a large number of us, this morning when we were scheduled to have it was supposed to be like, 100-something in attendance, and then it didn't come to pass. So since it is a small group, we do want you to feel free to ask questions. If you have comments you want to make, please do feel free to share, because it is such a small group. We can definitely have a conversation, and it can be truly beneficial. So to get started, our topic is peaceful practices. And peaceful practices is a model that deals with relationships, learning, and accountability. And in today's session, we will be looking at the peaceful practices model, and we'll be focusing on relationships. And at this time, it will be the relationship between the principal and the counselors. So let's go ahead and get started. I guess we're always good to do the introduction so you'll know who your presenters are. I'm Lindy Jones, and I'm a retired educator. After 28 and a half years in public education, I decided to retire and actually joined with my son and my husband and daughter, and we formed Pi Educational Counseling and Enrichment Services, PLLC. And this was as a result of us being educators, myself, and you'll see my co-presenter is my son. Being educators, we were just always concerned about the plight of education and how we can truly go in and make a difference. Although we felt that we were making a big difference as educators, we did not want to stop, and I did not want to stop after the retirement, but I wanted to play a different role. So therefore, Pieces was formed, and you'll see it's a multi-purpose organization, and we do some of everything. I'm a licensed professional counseling supervisor, so I do specialize in counseling children and adolescents who are in and out of the foster care system. I saw that there was a need for that during my time as a school counselor. I served as a school counselor for 14 years, and then 14 years as a math teacher. So I've been impacted by kids from all walks of life. So I wanted to, when I did open my business, to provide counseling services for students or children in that particular population. We do develop staff development services. We do enrichment services for students, as well as for school and various organizations. We do mediation. We have a lot of things in Pieces, and that's where we get our name. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to my son, Dr. Harrison Jones IV. And if you notice the picture on the left, I always like to say that's my son and myself. We were graduates in the doctoral program at Lamar University. And I entered the program with my son because I guess he twisted my arm and asked me me to join him. And I initially started off saying, sure, I'll join him, but I probably had no intentions of finishing it. But I do love learning, and I enjoyed the process. So because of his influence, I stuck with it. So without further ado, we'll have Dr. Harrison Jones IV.
Good morning, good afternoon. I guess this morning was a lot prepared for less earlier, but I want to let you all know that she's very humble when she talks about what she did. I had the great experience of walking across the stage at Lamar University, earning my doctorate degree, and the next name I heard right behind me was Dr. Lindy Jones. And one of the things that she harped upon during her our opening about why and what we do at Pieces is, you know, having watched my mom serve as a counselor for 17 years, and I was also a math teacher. Then also I had the opportunity to serve as an assistant principal and a principal. And going through the levels, I noticed that when we moved through that, I watched how my mom would interact with her administration. And so when I became an administrator, I wanted to interact with my counselors the exact same way. But what I found was that that's not always the case. A lot of times when you go to different campuses and different counselors or different situations, the different visions, that a lot of times the counselor and principal relationship is not as fluid as it could be, and that is crucial to what can increase the positive and achieving a climate in your campus. And so one of the things we've come up with and we've decided to share with everyone is what we've been doing for the past 13 years for me and 17, 20-something years for my mother was peaceful practices, because these are the things that we've been implementing in our campuses to make sure that our campuses have low disciplinary rates, great positive relationships, and communication between all the teachers and the students. And so we're excited to share this with you all today.
Okay. So here we have the model for Pieces, Peaceful Practices model. And basically, as I said earlier, it deals with relationships, learning, and accountability. And you can see our little upside down Pieces sign to let you know we definitely want to let you know that the practices that we have are geared to steer away from conflict, but mainly to peacefully accomplish the goals that we set forth, which is definitely to impacting students' lives so that they can be successful. So we want you to get started, and the first thing we want you to do is to imagine your perfect school or your ideal school. What does it look like? You know, when you think of your ideal school, you look at the building, you think about the students. I know when you think about a building, you automatically think, oh, I would like the best building ever, because, you know, as a principal, you know, building maintenance is extremely important. As a counselor, you want to have that nice office. I even noticed a few years ago, we had one of the campuses that I had just left and went to an older building, and I walked back in that campus. You walk in after hours, the light comes on as you approach the hallways. There's elevators and so forth. So you think about your building. Who are the students? Of course, we want to have the best students, the ideal students, the students who are ready to learn, the students whose parents have prepared them to have a great day. They got them up in the morning, gave them a good breakfast, kissed them on the cheek, and said, get to school and do your best. Behaviors, again, those students would be well behaved. We have the best admin, leadership, teachers, and students. And you see here, we see some perfect school staff. We have the principal there and so forth. Just imagine, who would you want to be on your staff? Who would be your teachers? Who would be your leadership team? Then you want to say, well, what's happening in the classroom? You want to say every learner engaged, they're meeting your high expectations. The hallways are silent, you know, in between classes. You know, they have started implementing music passing through. Everybody's going through silent. Imagine that. What would be your ideal school? And then, of course, discipline. Discipline would be a conversation, you know, commending the students for how well behaved they are. In other words, that's our perfect school. So everyone take a few minutes and imagine their perfect school. And I see that, Dr. Jones, you can talk about some of the other individuals that we've chosen for our, you might want to choose for your perfect school also.
Well, this is a great example of what it takes to actually get your students engaged, because I love Avengers. And so the first person I see in the front is Nick Fury. And so I know what he does to manage all of those great minds. If y'all know about the Avengers, they're all super wizards. They're all smart guys. They all can take over the world at any time. But he has to be able to manage those great minds in order for them to practice towards that vision. Then you look at the school counselors, Black Panther. You know, Black Panther, he doesn't always armed with everything to take over, and he's willing to give the power to everyone else in order to make sure everyone has the greater good. But in turn, the school counselor is armed with all of the things, right? All of the things that are able to make a school better. They have the empathy. They have the desire for all the students to be successful. So we have to think, okay, what do we want between Nick Fury and Black Panther and the school counselor, and then look at what we have above, the superintendent with Stacey Abrams, you know, just kind of reviewing. She's making sure we follow the rules, check policies, accountability, making sure people show up, making sure that everybody knows that they have a part in what's going on in the overall vision of the school district. So if you look at what these ideals and these characteristics are, what we want for our ideal school, and I don't know if anyone on this call could argue with any of these ideas of anyone on this picture of who would be the typical people that you would have in these positions. But we want to get all of the campuses everywhere to have this type of ideal school, the one that has these kind of individuals there. So think about how would we fit in as a principal, as a professor, or as a counselor to that type of school.
And so ideally, you know, we couldn't have perhaps Michelle Obama or Toni Morrison on our staff, but you may have someone on your staff with those same characteristics. In other words, or you could grow them into being that type of individual to meet the needs of your campus. So, with that being said, we want to think about your beliefs about the roles of schools, because once we examine our own beliefs, then we can move forward to determine what is needed. Now, maybe we can do some type of poll. I'm not sure how we would do that, but let's say maybe raise your hand right now, or if you are a teacher on the call, so we can at least know who our audiences are. Are you able to see Dr. Jones?
Well, you know, we have their hand raised. I don't think they have that on there. But I think what we can do is if you have everyone is in the chat box, you can say, type a yes if you're a teacher, no if you're not a teacher. Counselor, we have Serena Watkins as a counselor.
Awesome.
Appreciate in there. Just type in what role you have, teacher, counselor, administrator. I guess we could, abbreviate. I guess that would be good. T for counselor, C for T for teacher, T for teacher. C for counselor, T for teacher, C for counselor, A for administrator, P for principal,
yes,
principal.
Great idea.
Because we want to get an idea kind of what the audience is and who we are talking to. Because we have counselors that are in here. In central office, we have in there Brittany Brooks. You know, we have to recognize that this information is important, because when we talk about the role of a counselor and administrator, a lot of times we don't talk to the counselors about the decision making that goes on the campus, just from an administrator point of view. And reasons why, there might be just things that have to be separated. We understand that everything can't be a part of the whole group, but we have to confront our own beliefs about what we think is the role of the teacher, counselor, or administrator. I appreciate you all.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Sean. How's it going, Dr. Davenport?
Okay. So thank you so much for the feedback. So we do at least have someone representing each of the roles, so that's awesome. And we have a central office personnel, which is great. So you think about your beliefs about your students and your definition of success, the teaching practices, behavior management strategies, the use of language. You know, how are you talking to the students? How are you talking to your staff? What is your tonal articulation? Are you being heard? Are you able to communicate effectively so that everyone can understand what your intent is, what you're saying? So the fundamental beliefs that we usually have are usually evident in the practices that we have. And we call these best practices in your celebrations, your discipline, your policies and procedures, your practices and your routines, traditions, your symbols and your artifacts. In other words, these are all part of best practices. And as you talk about this, you want to reflect on the things going on your campus. How do you celebrate success on your campus? What are you doing? What are your discipline policies in place? How did you arrive at those? Who all were involved in actually coming up with those procedures? Do you practice your routines? How are they implemented? What are some traditions that you have, some symbols that you have, and even some artifacts, things that you do? When these components align, the quality of the relationships that are created supports a culture with peaceful practices. And we can see that all of these things are essential, but they're really based on your beliefs as to how they should operate in your school setting.
And it's definitely important, just wanted to add, when you talk about those things with peaceful practices, that's what we do. We come in and we're going to look at those practices that you do. We're going to look at what we do for celebration. We're going to look at what your traditions are. Because, even now, there's a lot of campuses, I don't know if y'all have noticed, their traditions are changing. A lot of the schools' names are changing. A lot of the mascots are changing. And a lot of the things that we think might just not be that important are very important to the staff and the students. Like if you think about all the schools, I know we're talking with Texas people here, a lot of Texas people maybe. If you have the schools, Austin ISD, for example, they had to change the Reagan High School from the name. All the schools that had the Confederate names for teachers, they had to change their, for schools, they had to change their names. And that changes the culture of the school. That changes how things are approached. So with peaceful practices, we look at all of those things from a perspective of what it is as an administrator and a counselor and a student to make sure everything coincides to make sure you have peace on your campuses. And we're going to outline some of those things right now.
Okay. So when we look at peaceful practices, we're concerned with the who, that's the leadership, the staff, students, parents, community. You see the what, in other words, the communication. How are you talking to the individuals that are part of the who? What about when conflicts resolve? How are you resolving those conflicts? Are you looking at their emotional wellness? Right now, with this pandemic and the situation that we've been in, emotional wellness, it should be at the top, really. I'm sure it's at the top of everyone in the school's list because you are concerned about the emotional welfare of your students who are coming to school. Those who are online, you're concerned about the teachers and the extra things that they have to do. Your administrators, your whole staff. So that's what we're talking about with peaceful practices. And it's really a lot, but it's important that all of these things are considered. Where? In the classroom, now you have to consider a virtual environment, your professional development. I'm sure people now might be saying another Zoom session, and it's hard. Because we can't get up, if we were out, we could get out and do some little hand holding or high-fiving and celebrating and dancing, but we can't do that on the Zoom. Community forums. How are you keeping your community informed as to what's going on? Just right now with the governor's new mandate. That's a big deal because people in the community are concerned about it. And so therefore it's affecting the kids at school. How many of you had kids at school who already came yesterday saying, hey, I'm not going to wear a mask because the governor says I don't have to. Those are things that you have to really deal with now. Behavior in the hallways. In other words, where? The games, the concerts, the training. And then the when. In other words, we're talking about when is the communication. Is it continuous, as needed? How often are you getting together? When? Ongoing basis, or is it just as needed? And why? Because we're looking at success, goal attainment, and future benefits. I know as an educator, I would always tell my students, and they thought it was really funny, but I was really serious, that I want them to be responsible citizens, to have a good job and some knowledge. And I was a math teacher, and I said, especially no math, because I'm going to be at the age one day when they would be in charge of my Social Security, and I want them to make sure that my benefits were still there and I could get my check that I've earned over the years. So we want them to be contributing members of society because they will be our future doctors or lawyers and so forth. And so that's why we want to make sure that we're including everyone as far as peaceful practices are concerned. Again, it's relationships, learning, and accountability, and that's a big piece. But today, we're really focusing on the relationships between the principal and the counselor. So our peaceful practices model is basically a 5-tiered model based on trust, a shared vision, communication, shared decision-making, and commitment. These are just the basics of a peaceful relationship. If all 5 of these things are present, then you can see that peaceful practices would be in place.
Look at the center right there. The center of it, it says what? It says trust. And I mean, at the center of it is trust, communication, and commitment. So we want to bring those two together to bridge the gap between the vision and the decision making of the principal and the counselor.
Yeah.
That would be mine. You don't want this one? Sure.
So, there was a survey that was given back in 2011 with the College Board, and it basically was looking at the qualities or the characteristics of an effective principal.
So upside down coffee mug prank on my
sister. We did use this as a resource when we were coming up with our model, because it has been one that has been explored, but I think someone needs to probably mute. Is everyone muted?
Girls ain't ice cream is hot cocoa.
I think I'm hearing someone. Okay, maybe they did. So this was a model in 2011 article that was actually completed by the College Board, and it examined the relationship. So we did look at some of the things that they talked about, because even though that was done in 2011, it's still important. So the whole purpose of dealing with the relationship is to do a self-evaluation or a self-assessment. So we're going to go through some things that the principal and the counselor should look at and determine where they stand as far as their relationship. And when you're looking at the self-assessment, and then if you're not in those positions, then you can look at the things on your campus or your experiences that you had when you were on a campus. If you are a principal or a counselor, then you're going to look at it from that aspect. Or as a teacher, looking at the relationship of the principal and the counselor on your campus. And you want to rate the importance of this quality, 1 being not important and 5 being important. Then you're going to look at the presence. In other words, you're saying this is how important it is, but then you're going to rate and say, well, is it present? How do I see it manifested on my campus? And then see if there's an actual gap between its importance and its presence. So the first one is open and honest communication that provides many opportunities for input. So this is the first thing, communication. So when we think about that on a campus, we want to know how you are effectively communicating to the counselor. A lot of times we'll find out that some people or some principals aren't even aware of the counselor's beliefs and their philosophy. And I know that when you're actually hiring a counselor, that's hopefully one question that is actually asked. But even if they are already there as a principal, you should know this is how my counselor believes, or how she feels, or how he or she feels about this. What is their philosophy? Do you know about the counseling delivery system? Or has the counselor relayed that to you? How do they deliver effective programs? Do you know that they have programs? How they are accountable for the things that the School Counselor Association says they should be accountable for, or the Texas School Counseling Association, or the National School Counseling Association? In other words, how are they accountable? What are their action plans? So these are just some things that you should be talking to your counselor about. You all should be having conversations about, so that you all can be on the same page. Open and honest communication is essential. And you need the opportunities for that, not just, an example they gave was, I'm going to meet with the counselor at the beginning or right before school starts to make sure all the schedules are ready and so forth. In other words, the meeting should be ongoing. And then the counselor, a lot of times we think that the principal should just initiate it, but the counselor should initiate opportunities to talk to the principal also. And said, hey, these are my plans. Get together at the beginning of the school year. This is what our vision, the whole counseling staff, this is our vision for the school year. And this is what we want to accomplish as counselors during this school year. When you do not have open and honest communication, you'll miss out on a lot of information that can help the school be successful. Okay, The next one, opportunities to share ideas, share information, share goals, share data, share needs, share student success. This is extremely important. A lot of people don't realize that, but the counselors can play an important role in closing the gap, the achievement gap. One section of the school where all the data is available is usually in the counselor's office. And that is extremely important. The counselor has access to all the test scores. They have access to the demographics data. They have access to the economic status of the students. Are they at risk? Are they on free or reduced lunch? They have everything there. They can look at counseling from a social justice approach. In other words, looking and making sure equity is there. In other words, what are we doing to provide the things that the students need? Are the programs equitable? I know my experience, I was a counselor on a alternative disciplinary campus my last 4.5 years. Being on that campus opened my eyes so much to things that were happening in the school district, because this campus is where all the middle and high school students came to for disciplinary problems. And there was an overwhelming number of African American males in the campus. And, you know, when you talk to leaders about it, well, the majority of the students, you know, in the district are, you know, African American. And I would always say this, well, if that's the case, then why isn't our AP classes are filled with the majority of African American males? Why isn't the cheerleading sport has, you know, African American females? In other words, they like to use that they are the majority when it comes to actually discipline things, but when it comes to other things, it isn't. So your school counselor could be one to share with you the vision of saying, hey, let's try to increase the number of African American males that are taking AP classes, you know, that are, you know, there's an overwhelming number of them who are not passing the STAR test, and they're in this teacher's class. Maybe there's an issue in regards to maybe she needs some cultural diverse training and so forth, you know. So the counselor is one that can actually share ideas and information and data and can help with student success. One thing, does your counselors a needs assessment? Who does a needs assessment at the beginning of the school year? Is that in place on your campus? A needs assessment for the students, the parents, the staff, the teachers, in other words, to determine what is actually needed on the campus. When I was a school counselor, I made sure that I did that every year, so that when I came up with my guidance program, I wouldn't just be presenting stuff just to present. It would be something that could impact our school-wide initiatives. So it's important to share. Okay? The next one, the school council participation on your school leadership teams. How many of you, other principals you know, have school counselors participating on the leadership teams? Do they provide input on the campus improvement plan? In other words, are they a part of the goal development? In other words, include the things that the counselor has as a part of the plan, because as I said, they have a lot of data. They've gotten to know probably the students and so forth. You just don't want to have them in charge of testing. That's a pet peeve of mine, because to me, to have a school counselor with all the knowledge, skills, and that they have, to take up all of that time counting textbooklets is just a waste of really good knowledge and skills that could be used elsewhere. Once I finally got relieved of taking the test, I just didn't sit around and wait. No, I was in the classrooms. I was giving those kids test-taking skills, giving them things to deal with anxiety, confidence-building skills. So on the day of the testing, if they had anxiety or problems, I was there in the hallways, you know, ready to assist them, ready to get them back on track and so forth. So there's a much better use of counselors other than testing, but they can provide input. Do I have anyone with any comments so far? Because I can't tell if you have something to say, if you want to interject, you want to jump in, hey,
Tamika,
I agree with that, or wait a minute, I disagree with that, or you can say, Dr. Jones, you're a little bit one-sided because I see you talking like from the council standpoint. But Mr. Jones, Dr. Harrison Jones here, he can give you the principal standpoint, because a lot of times I am a little one-sided because I do know the counselor's point purview just a little bit better than I do the principal purview. But I do feel that counselors have so much to offer to the campus, and that including them, you would see it could take up a whole lot of gaps that you can see on your campus by having the counselors involved. Then you might say, I've had counselors and they never want to do that. They love doing testing. Then you might want to assess to see, wait a minute, where did, because when you sign up for counseling, to be a counselor, it's definitely not to sit and count test booklets. So if you find a counselor who loves doing testing and all of those administrative things, maybe they don't really want to be a counselor, because counselors are basically want to have a big influence on impacting student success. I got to put a disclaimer, but that's my opinion, but I feel like that's the way it is.
Well,
also.
from the principal standpoint, from the administrative standpoint, it is our job to increase the capacity of our teachers and our educators on our campus. So when you do have a situation, and Dr. Jones is absolutely correct, when you have the counselor has all this information, all those responsibilities, all those things that you want to do, but they want to just pigeonhole themselves for testing, or pigeonhole themselves for books, or pigeonhole themselves for scheduling. You have to take those opportunities from a principal standpoint to build that relationship, and then make sure that they're learning and growing. So you have to challenge them to take risks. Okay, this year you're not just going to do, you know how to do tests, you're going to switch to maybe doing RTI interventions for everyone. Sorry about that. But when you make sure that that is going on in your campus on a regular basis, as a principal, you have to be concerned and ultimately saying that I want to grow my counselors. And the only way that you're going to be able to have that growth with your counselors, if you have this kind of conversation with your team and with your counselors about what are the goals, what are we looking for success, how do we improve our campus, and what can we do to make sure the students that aren't getting it end up getting it.
Definitely. And one thing that counselors can do, they can make sure that their equity goes in there, because they can't see where the gaps are. We understand as principals and administrators, you're focused on so many other things, but the counselors can actually, provided that they are given the opportunity, could go in and look at the data and see where the needs are for the campus. Can be definitely an excellent resource for the campus. Mutual trust and respect between the principals and the counselors. This is, I think, just the basics for everything. That as an administrator, you need to understand the unique knowledge and skills of the counselor, and as a counselor, you need to understand the unique knowledge and skills of the principal, because both are very different positions, but they are still focused on the same goal. And you'll find out that if there's an understanding, that can be a form or a road that can lead to trust. In other words, respect the skills that they have and for their skill set that they have. I know there's not a principal around who, when there's a crisis on campus, that they do not go to the counselors. If there's a protocol needed, they recognize, okay, this is the counselor. Let me go take this to the counselor. Like immediately, here's a protocol, and then the counsel, they are respected. The counselors can handle that also. But keep in mind, counselors are trained to do so much more than just the protocols and so forth. They can do guidance programs. In other words, they can focus on the issues that the students are having through classroom guidance, through a delivery service program where they actually meet with the parents, meet with the community, meet with the teachers. If a teacher is struggling, sometimes an administrator going in might be intimidated to the teacher. But if you see that the teacher is having a problem with a particular student, have them go and talk to the counselor. I know when I was a middle school counselor, even all throughout my counseling career, my door was open policy, and I had so many teachers coming in. And as a counselor, when you're actually providing counseling to them, but you're motivating them. You're telling them you can do this, you got this. Or they talk to you about a student, and then you suggest to them. I had a student that had gone through a traumatic event, and so the teacher was very concerned about them. So they came and talked to me about the student, and she was an English teacher. I said, let's find a book that maybe you could suggest for the young lady to read. And she was just so happy with that because the teacher gave her that book, suggested that she read it. It built a whole different type of relationship between the teacher and the student. So counselors can listen to teachers. They can listen to administrators. I worked closely with an assistant principal, and he used to call the good cop, bad cop relationship. When he really didn't want to suspend a child, he would bring him in the office with me. And then I would be talking to him about the child. So the child needed to see that there was someone who was an advocate for them. So in other words, those are just numerous ways that you can increase the respect between a relationship. Not just saying that you respect them, you trust them, but actually showing by how you're using them and including them and making them feel a part of the team. Because every good counselor wants to feel that they are making an impact, they are valuable, and what they're doing makes a difference. And they really want to be a part of the team. A lot of times we know feedback and support is always appreciated, and try to do that rather than just criticism all the time. In other words, that's extremely important. So mutual trust and respect between the principal and the counselor, I think that must happen before anything else can occur. Any goals can be obtained if you want to do that. And then finally is commitment, a collective commitment to equity and opportunity. So when you get together, the principal and the counselor, which by now I'm sure you all are going to definitely say, let me make sure I have someone from the counseling staff, at least on my leadership team, so that we can definitely come up with a campus improvement plan that's showing forth the equity, an opportunity for all learners to be engaged, for everyone to grow. When you have staff development opportunities. I remember I was on one campus and they brought in, and this was at the alternative campus, the principal was paying a consultant to come into the campus. And I told you about the demographics of our campus. It was majority African-American males on the